Stonehenge represents a crowning achievement for our ancient ancestors. But why did they build it here? Why choose this place? I'm here to uncover the answer.
They didn't call it Stonehenge. They called it Stanhangen, the hanging stones. Massive slabs lifted, balanced, and aligned with a precision that feels almost impossible. We've called it a temple, a calendar, a burial ground, safe explanations. But what if it was built to do something, to shape sound, space, and even the human mind? And if it was a machine, not a monument, who built it? And what were they trying to awaken? Echoes of stone. Close your eyes for a moment. I want you to imagine something. You're standing inside the stone circle, not the roped-off, tourist-managed version you see in photographs. The original, complete, every stone in place. The lintels form an unbroken ring above your head. The blue stones arranged in their inner horseshoe. The altar stone at the center. It's pre-dawn. The air is cold and heavy with dew.
This is the altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge, now partially buried. It's one of the largest stones here at around 6 tons. The big question is how on earth it was transported from northeast Scotland.
And a few dozen people stand around you in the half-dark. Someone begins to chant. A low, resonant tone, not a melody. Just a sustained note, somewhere in the range of the human voice at its deepest. And then something happens. The sound doesn't dissipate. It doesn't scatter into the open Salisbury Plain the way sound normally does outdoors. Instead, it stays. It wraps around you. It amplifies. The stones catch the vibration and hold it, reflecting it inward, layering it, compressing it. The note you're hearing isn't just coming from the person chanting anymore, it's coming from everywhere, from the stones themselves. This isn't speculation. This is measured science. In 2012, researchers from the University of Salford conducted detailed acoustic testing at Stonehenge, and because the original monument is incomplete, I built a full-scale acoustic model to simulate what the complete circle would have sounded like. What they found was remarkable. The intact stone circle would have functioned as an echo-canceling chamber. Sound generated inside the circle was amplified and sustained within the space, while being significantly reduced outside it. The stones created what acousticians call a reverberant field, a contained sonic environment where sound behaves very differently than it does in open air. Think about that for a moment. 5,000 years ago, someone built an outdoor space that behaves like an indoor one. A roofless room that traps sound. That's not accidental. You don't achieve that by randomly placing rocks in a field. You achieve it through deliberate spatial engineering. The precise sizing, spacing, and arrangement of reflective surfaces to control how sound waves propagate. But the acoustic properties go deeper than echo management. Several researchers have noted that the dimensions and materials of the stones would have been capable of generating infrasound.
This is some kind of different material placed here, is what you're thinking?
Yes, yes, and it's giving a very high resistance signal, so it'd be something like stone. You're seeing a ghost of an important structure here that, potentially people haven't seen with their eyes for thousands of years.
Sound waves below the threshold of human hearing, typically below 20 hertz. You can't hear infrasound with your ears, but your body detects it. Your chest cavity resonates. Your organs vibrate at frequencies they're not designed to vibrate at. And the psychological effects are profound and well documented. Infrasound has been shown to induce anxiety, unease, and a pervasive sense of dread in test subjects who have no idea they're being exposed to it. At certain frequencies, and it can cause visual disturbances, a slight blurring at the periphery of vision that the brain interprets as movement. At slightly higher intensities, it can trigger what researchers describe as a feeling of presence, the unmistakable sensation that someone or something is standing right behind you, even when you're completely alone. Now imagine you're a Neolithic farmer. You've walked for days to reach this monument. You've been told your entire life that the stones are sacred, that the gods dwell within the circle. You step inside. A priest begins to chant, and suddenly your chest is tight. Your vision shimmers. The hair on your arms stands up. You feel a presence, vast, invisible, undeniable, pressing against you from all sides. You wouldn't call it acoustics. You'd call it God. And whoever built this place, whoever chose these specific stones, this specific arrangement, this specific geometry, they knew that. They may not have had the word infrasound, but they understood the principle. They understood that certain shapes, certain materials, and certain sounds could make the human body feel things that the human mind would interpret as divine. The question is, who were they building it for? And who were they building it against? Engineering fear. Physics over faith. Stay inside the circle for a moment longer, because what happens next changes everything about how we think about this place. If Stonehenge's acoustic properties were accidental, a happy coincidence of stone placement, then we'd expect to find similar effects at other Neolithic stone circles in Britain. There are hundreds of them. If you drop enough rocks in enough fields, eventually one of them will produce interesting sound effects. But researchers who have studied other circles, Avebury, the Ring of Brodgar, Callanish, have found that while some exhibit minor acoustic properties, none approach the sophistication of Stonehenge, none create the same contained reverberant field, none generate the same potential for infrasonic resonance. Stonehenge is an outlier. It's not a lucky accident. It's a refinement. And that distinction matters enormously. Because if the acoustic effects are engineered, then the psychological effects are engineered. And if the psychological effects are engineered, then we're not looking at a place of worship. We're looking at a technology of control. I want to be careful here, because this is where responsible storytelling parts ways with conspiracy. I'm not claiming that Neolithic priests were running a sinister mind control operation. Human motivation is rarely that simple, and ancient societies were rarely that cynical. What I am suggesting is something more nuanced, and in many ways, more interesting. Every civilization in human history has relied on shared experience to maintain social cohesion. The rituals that bind a community together, the ceremonies, the festivals, the sacred rites, work because they make people feel something collectively. They create emotional states, awe, reverence, fear, ecstasy, that override individual concerns and align a group around shared beliefs and shared authority. Modern institutions do exactly the same thing. A cathedral's soaring vaulted ceilings, the resonance of an organ, the smell of incense, the play of light through stained glass. These aren't aesthetic choices. They're engineering choices. They're designed to create a specific psychological state in the person who walks through the door. A state of smallness, of humility, of readiness to believe. Stonehenge may be the oldest example of this technology that we've ever found. And the people who controlled it, who understood how it worked, who knew which sounds to make and when to make them, who could stand at the center of that circle and summon what everyone else experienced as divine presence, those people would have wielded extraordinary power. Not military power, not economic power, something deeper. The power to define reality itself, to tell 1,000 people standing in that circle, their chests vibrating and their vision blurred, their skin crawling with the sensation of invisible presence. The gods are here. I can hear them. And they have a message for you. Is this what happened? I don't know. No one does. The builders of Stonehenge left no written records. Everything we know about their intentions is inference, reconstruction, educated guesswork built on layers of physical evidence. But the physical evidence is real. The acoustic properties are measurable. The psychological effects of infrasound are documented. And the arrangement of the stones is not random. Something was being done here, to someone, by someone who understood how to do it. And if the acoustics weren't accidental, then we have to ask, what else about this monument was deliberate? Stonehenge, silent machine. The stones themselves are the first clue, and the closer you look, the stranger it gets. At Stonehenge, there are two distinct types of stone, each telling a story of ingenuity, ambition, and precision.
Stonehenge is the world's most famous prehistoric monument. The stone circle was erected in the late Neolithic period, around 4,500 years ago.
The massive outer circle and the towering trilithon horseshoe are made of sarsen, a type of sandstone that is incredibly dense, incredibly hard, and incredibly heavy. The largest sarsens weigh around 25 tons. The heel stone, standing sentinel outside the main entrance, tips the scale at roughly 35 tons. For decades, researchers assumed they had been dragged from the Marlborough Downs, about 25 miles north. And recent geochemical studies, including a 2020 analysis published in Science Advances, confirmed this, pinpointing most of the sarsens to West Woods near Marlborough. 25 miles may not sound impossible, but consider this: 25-ton stones moved without wheels and without metal tools over uneven terrain. Experimental archaeology has shown that Neolithic people could have achieved this with timber sledges, ropes, and sheer human muscle. It's a feat of coordination and persistence, certainly, but not quite the mystery here. The real puzzle lies with the bluestones. These smaller stones, forming the inner ring and horseshoe, are made of various igneous and volcanic rocks sourced from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales.
Around 100 years ago, reveals the bluestones journey to be just as remarkable.
We know the bluestones came from Wales because they've got this really distinctive geology.
Roughly 150 to 180 miles away, depending on the route. Transporting 2 to 5 ton stones across forests, rivers, wetlands, and hills, entirely without wheeled vehicles, roads, or metal tools, seems almost inconceivable. For years, some scholars suggested glaciers carried these stones south during the last ice age, depositing them conveniently on Salisbury Plain. But the evidence has largely dismantled this theory. Geologists Dr. Richard Bevans of the National Museum of Wales and Dr. Rob Ixer of University College London began a painstaking geochemical fingerprinting project in 2011, matching individual bluestones to precise outcrops in the Preseli Hills. Excavations led by Professor Mike Parker Pearson between 2011 and 2015 uncovered Neolithic quarrying sites at Carn Godog and Craig Rossi Phelan, complete with wedge holes, hammerstones, and stone-built loading platforms. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal fragments from these sites placed extraction between 3,400 and 3,000 BC, perfectly aligned with Stonehenge's earliest construction phases. These weren't random boulders. These were selected, quarried, and transported with intent. The Neolithic builders knew exactly what they wanted, and then they engineered a way to get it. But what elevates this story from extraordinary to astonishing is that the bluestones sing. In 2013, researchers Paul Devereaux and John Wozencroft, with unprecedented permission from English Heritage, conducted acoustic tests on bluestones in Wales and at Stonehenge itself. Their results were startling. Between 5 and 10% of the stones in the Preseli Hills produced resonant, bell-like tones when struck. In localized hotspots near quarry sites, that number rose to 15 or 20%. Nearby, the Welsh village of Maen Clochog, literally bell stones, used bluestones as church bells well into the 18th century. At Stonehenge, even embedded in concrete for decades, some stones retained the capacity to resonate. Marks on their surfaces suggest they had been struck repeatedly, and potentially played as instruments to fill the monument with layered, overlapping tones. The builders didn't just choose stones for size or appearance, they chose stones that sang. And then, in 2024, the conversation took an entirely new turn. A study published in Nature, led by doctoral student Anthony Clark at Curtin University in Australia, working with teams from UCL, Aberystwyth University, and the University of Adelaide, analyzed the altar stone at the monument's heart. Long assumed to be another Welsh bluestone, the altar stone is actually old red sandstone from the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland. Geochemical analysis of zircon, apatite, and rudel grains confirmed this with over 95% statistical confidence. The altar stone is massive, 6 tons and 16 feet long, and it traveled more than 700 kilometers to reach Salisbury Plain. 5,000 years ago, without wheels, iron tools, or written language, someone moved this stone from Scotland to southern England. Professor Nick Pearce of Aberystwyth University calls it a genuinely shocking result, emphasizing that no other Neolithic monument in Europe sourced stones from so far away. The pattern is clear. Stonehenge's builders weren't settling for what was nearby. They procured the stones they needed wherever those stones happened to exist. So, Stonehenge combines singing stones from Wales, a central altar from Scotland, and massive sarsens from Wiltshire. All converge on a single point on the Salisbury Plain, a location chosen with intent, not luck. Every selection, every transport, every placement was deliberate. This wasn't construction. It was engineering. Not for mere survival, not for superstition, not for show, but to function. To produce effects, tangible and intangible, that resonate through space, through stone, and through human perception. Whatever Stonehenge ultimately was, it was built to work. Not just to stand, not just to impress, to do something. Celestial Stone Secrets. Everyone knows about the solstice alignment. It's the postcard image of Stonehenge, the midsummer sunrise pouring through the entrance, splitting the monument's axis like a blade of gold. It's beautiful, it's real, and it's the least interesting astronomical feature of the monument. Because the solstice alignment is obvious. It's the thing you'd notice if you spent a single year watching the sun from this location. It requires no special knowledge, no long-term observation, and no multi-generational record-keeping. Any sufficiently attentive farmer could figure out the solstice. But there are alignments at Stonehenge that you could not figure out in a single lifetime. The moon does not follow the same path as the sun. Its rising and setting points on the horizon shift in a complex pattern governed by several overlapping cycles. The most significant of these is the lunar nodal cycle, a period of approximately 18.6 years, during which the moon's extreme rising and setting positions gradually migrate to their maximum extent and then slowly retreat. At the extremes of this cycle, known as the major lunar standstill, the moon rises and sets at points on the horizon that it will not reach again for another 18.6 years. And Stonehenge tracks this. And the station stones, a set of positions marked within the monument's surrounding earthwork, form a rectangle whose geometry corresponds precisely to the extreme positions of the moon during the major lunar standstill. This is not a casual alignment. The station stone rectangle only works at the specific latitude of Stonehenge. Move the monument even 50 miles north or south, and the geometric relationship between solar and lunar extremes changes enough to break the alignment. Stonehenge was not just built with astronomical knowledge. It was built at a location selected because of astronomical knowledge. The site itself is part of the design. The 2024 to 2025 major lunar standstill, the most recent occurrence of this 18.6-year cycle, has prompted fresh research into how precisely Stonehenge tracks these events. Archaeoastronomers have been studying the monument during this period to test alignment hypotheses against direct observation, and early indications suggest the correlations are even more precise than previously documented. But some researchers have pushed even further. There are hypotheses, and I want to stress that these are hypotheses, not established conclusions, suggesting that certain alignments at Stonehenge point not toward prominent celestial objects, but toward regions of sky that appear to the naked eye to be empty. Dark patches, gaps between stars. The question these researchers raise is provocative. Were the builders tracking something we can no longer see? A star that has since shifted position due to precession? A celestial event that occurred once and was encoded in stone as a record? Or were they pointing at the absence itself, marking a direction for reasons we don't yet understand? I don't have answers to these questions. Neither does anyone else, despite what certain YouTube thumbnails might promise. What I can tell you is that the astronomical sophistication embedded in Stonehenge exceeds what any model of primitive sun worship can account for. These builders understood orbital mechanics at a level that required centuries of continuous observation and record-keeping. They understood that the sky moves in cycles longer than any human lifespan, and they built a monument that would remain aligned to those cycles for thousands of years after they were gone. That's not religion, that's science, encoded in stone, by people who never wrote a single word. Which raises the most unsettling question of all. Who were these people? And how did they know what they knew? Who controlled the machine? Here's what we know about the builders of Stonehenge. Almost nothing. We know they weren't a single group. The monument was built in phases over a period of roughly 1,500 years, from approximately 3000 BCE to 1500 BCE. The earliest phase, the circular ditch and bank, was constructed by one culture. The bluestones were erected by people who may have been their descendants, or may have been a completely different population. The Sarsen circle and trilithons represent yet another phase, possibly yet another group. Stonehenge, as we see it today, is a palimpsest, layer upon layer of construction, modification, and reinterpretation by people separated by centuries. But here's what connects all of those phases: organization. Moving an 80-ton Sarsen stone 25 miles requires, by conservative estimates,
huge stones like this replica were quarried, carved, and then moved for many miles, some of them from as far away as Wales, 200 miles to the west. They barged them down rivers. They may have rolled them on logs like this. Nobody knows for sure.
Several hundred coordinated laborers working over weeks or months. Transporting bluestones from Wales requires either a massive overland expedition or a sophisticated maritime operation. Either way, we're talking about logistics that demand planning, resource management, and authority. If the altar stone truly came from Scotland, the supply chain stretches across most of the British Isles. This isn't a village-level organization. This is civilization-level coordination. Whoever directed the construction of Stonehenge had the ability to mobilize labor, procure resources, and maintain a construction program across generations. And they could command people to haul 5-ton rocks across 150 miles of wilderness. And people did it. Why? The conventional answer is religious devotion. The stones were sacred. The labor was an offering. People participated willingly because they believed in the project's spiritual significance. And that may well be true. But it's also true that the people who controlled the religious narrative, who stood at the center of the acoustic chamber and interpreted the vibrations as divine speech, who predicted the lunar standstill and announced it as prophecy fulfilled, who alone understood why these specific stones from these specific places were necessary. Those people occupied a position of extraordinary power, power that was invisible precisely because it was encoded in specialized knowledge rather than military force. You don't need an army to control a population if you control their experience of reality. If you can stand inside a stone circle and make 1,000 people feel the presence of gods, you don't need swords. You need acoustics. Now, I want to be very clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not. I'm not saying that Neolithic Britain was run by a shadowy cabal of acoustic engineers who cynically manipulated innocent people. That's a modern projection onto an ancient world. The people who built Stonehenge almost certainly believed in what they were building. The priests, shamans, or ritual specialists who operated within the circle probably experienced the same psychological effects as everyone else. They may not have understood the mechanism any more than a medieval congregation understood the physics of cathedral acoustics. They just knew it worked. But knowledge of how to make it work, which stones to select, where to place them, what sounds to produce, when to hold the ceremonies, that knowledge would have been guarded. It would have been transmitted within a small group, generation to generation, because knowledge shared widely is knowledge that can't be used for leverage. Every priesthood in history has understood this principle, and the builders of Stonehenge were, if nothing else, profoundly sophisticated in their understanding of what moves the human heart. They built a machine that runs on physics and outputs belief. And for 15 centuries, it worked. The question we can't answer is whether the machine ever stopped working, or whether we just forgot how to turn it on. Stonehenge still stands, silent, immovable, and yet somehow alive. 5,000 years of wind and rain, of human footsteps and forgotten rituals have left it intact, but have they left it unchanged? We've traced its stones, measured its sounds, decoded fragments of its alignments, and still, the monument holds its secrets. What else is encoded in its geometry, in the vibrations of its stones, in the invisible rhythms of the sky above? The past is not finished with us, and neither is Stonehenge. When we look closer, will we uncover knowledge lost to time, or confront questions we aren't ready to answer?